Okay, we are live, and as a reminder, this meeting is live streamed and recorded and available on the internet by visiting the town of Parry Sound's website at www.parrysound.ca. I'd like to acknowledge at this time that we're on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people under the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 and the waterways traveled by the Métis of this region. Prior to the open session, council met for a closed meeting. It was moved by Councilor McDonald, second by Councilor McCann, that pursuant to section 239(2) and 3 of the Municipal Act SO 2001 C25 as amended, Council of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound moved to a special meeting closed to the public in order to address a matter pertaining to B, personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, staff member performance review and compensation. That resolution was carried and that meeting was had. Okay. May I have a mover and seconder for the agenda, please? Councilor Keith, Councilor Borneman. Is there any additions or prioritization of the agenda? Seeing none, okay. That the council agenda for January 21st, 2025 be approved as circulated. All in favor? That's carried. Any declaration of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Councillor Ashford.
I have a pecuniary interest in 1033, the bylaw 2025-7470.
1033?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other declarations? Nope. Okay. Let's see. Now, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, the minutes. Oh, the minutes. Yeah, sure. Mover and seconder for the minutes. Councillor Pulaski, Councillor McDonald. The minutes from the regular council meeting held December 17th, 2024 be approved as circulated. Any discussion or comments on those minutes? All in favor then? And that's carried. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a few minutes to hold a public meeting to hear any interested persons with regard to a proposed zoning amendment application under section 34 of the Planning Act. May I have a mover and seconder? Councilor McCann, Councilor Borneman, that we do now adjourn the regular meeting and declare the public meeting open. All in favor? That's carried. Ms. Johnson, can you explain how the public was notified of zoning amendment application Z2404 for WJR Hart Holdings?
Yes, Mayor McGarvey, notice was given by prepaid first-class mail to the required prescribed agencies and property owners within 120 meters and posted on the property. Notice is therefore considered to be provided in accordance with the Planning Act.
Thank you. Mr. Rand, can you explain the purpose of the proposed zoning application?
The subject property is located at 113 Bow Street. And the purpose of the proposed temporary zoning bylaw amendment application is to permit a trailer on the subject lands for a period of up to 2 years. The trailer is proposed to be utilized while a restaurant on the subject lands is undergoing renovation. And during the renovations, the trailer would allow for drive-through service with a limited menu. Specifically, if approved, the application would permit a temporary trailer for a period of up to 2 years. The temporary trailer shall only be permitted as part of a drive-through operation and shall not include any dining or public access. And the temporary trailer shall not be permitted when a restaurant is in operation on the subject lands. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. In accordance with the Planning Act, Council will consider all matters placed before it prior to granting a zoning amendment. If a public body who files an appeal of a decision of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound in respect to the proposed zoning amendment does not make written submissions to the Council before it provides or refuses to provide a decision, the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss the appeal. At this time, does anyone wish to speak in favor of the proposed application for the zoning amendment? And if so, please identify yourself by name and give your address. Nobody's on the line, right? I'll ask one more time. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this proposed zone application for a zoning amendment? Okay. So the next question is, does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the proposed application for the zoning amendment? I'll ask once more. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the proposed application for the zoning amendment? Nope. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Rand, have there been any letters received as a result of this notice?
Comments have been received by the fire chief, the chief building official, Lakeland Power and MTO, who all indicated no concerns, and no other public comments were received. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. May I have a mover and seconder to declare the public meeting closed? Councilor McCann, Councilor Ashford, that we do now declare the public meeting closed. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next is questions of staff. Councilor McDonald.
Thank you, Your Worship. Maybe I'll direct this to Mike. Regarding Kinsman Rink, I know there was some damages that had to be repaired. Is there an ETA on when maybe ice will be starting to go in, or have they started that process yet?
Through your worship. Yeah, the boards were actually repaired just last week. So Athletica came up and installed all the new pieces that were required, and staff began the process this morning, actually, of ice making. So we have pretty good coverage. Temperatures are favorable, so hopefully it shouldn't take very long before we have skatable ice out there.
Councilor McCann?
Thank you. I'm not sure. I guess this might be for Chief Thompson. I was reading an article in the Sudbury Star online a couple of days ago about the homeless network which exists there, the homeless network of Sudbury. And it's a network of people who reach out to homeless individuals on very, very cold nights when frostbite is imminent. And they have a network of people that get into action, deliver blankets, invite people into warming centers that are greater in number than usual. And I know, learning from the quality experience downtown committee, get that right, I'm sorry, that there certainly is a need for that. With homelessness being an issue in this town as well, we're not immune from that. Do we have anything like that's in place? And secondly, and this is to, I guess, more of a general observation or question. This area, if it's lacking anything for any particular demographic, it's a shelter for men. I learned through the same committee that the homeless, if you were to try to paint a picture of the homeless, although that would be difficult to do, but many men in their 50s and over are in that situation. And just this past week, I picked up a rider through Community Support Services who told me about his story. He had become homeless just like that. It was unfortunate. He had a lot of bad luck in his life growing up, but this was the ultimate, and it's something he didn't see coming. So I'm just wondering how and what is available at this point in time, and if we can move forward with services for people who are vulnerable.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's my understanding, and mainly through discussions with DSAB through the Downtown Quality of Experience Committee, that they have a very structured approach with staff that act as outreach services, as well as management staff
that work with any homelessness issues within the town of Parry Sound and resolve those issues on both the short and long-term strategies that they have available to use, be that utilization of hotels or other networks that they have for being able to house people. Now, that's not specific to the wintertime or the summertime. I believe that's a year-round strategy. Also, my understanding from speaking to specifically people at DSAB that there are fluctuations within regards to the homelessness problem, but they approach it and utilize the strategies that they have available to themselves to take care of individuals at any given time who might be on the streets with nowhere to sleep.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Keith?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions. Both may be for Mr. Cairns. And I know last year, and belated Happy New Year, Mr. Cairns, and to all staff. But last year, I recall there was some concern, as I'm sure there still is, regarding the intersection of Bose and Osler. And I'm wondering, is there data being collected or what is happening there so that maybe down the road there may be an amber light, that sort of thing? Can you advise me, please?
Certainly, through your worship. So we are collecting speed data at that intersection, and the police obviously maintain the data for vehicle accidents at that intersection. One of the challenging things at that intersection, we've looked at modifying signals, those sorts of things. There is a concern, and I know MTO has indicated it is our intersection, and they are absolutely correct in that. But they did have input into the signal timing because there is a potential to queue traffic onto the off-ramp on the 400. It's a very short distance from the where the 400 ramp meets McDougall Road. One of the challenging things at that intersection is there's almost a shadowing of cars when there's left turns being made. So there is an advanced when you're heading eastbound out of town toward the 400. There is an advance to turn left towards the Canadian Tire gas bar and the other businesses there. There is no advanced in the other direction. To establish a dedicated left turn lane would cause a queuing of traffic. So we've been looking at what kind of options are available there. In its current configuration, they're somewhat limited, but we are talking about some different design alternatives that may be available. That will not be a very cheap rebuild of that intersection and would certainly, I think, require consultation with the province, absolutely. So what we see is the people coming off the 400, I'm going to say, and I think you've heard me say often, I prefer slow speeds when people are traveling. The speed limit went up on the 400 to 110. So now they're coming off or about to enter 110 kilometer an hour zone. And you can see that ramp, the on-ramp as well when you're leaving town. So there's a tendency for people to perhaps speed up. And there's also a tendency for them to perhaps not slow down as much as they should be as they're entering onto McDougall Road and then onto Bow Street. So I did meet last year with a fellow who is actually coming back again. That's a certified road safety auditor. We looked at that intersection. He took some videos. So we're having some further conversations about some design options. Unfortunately, it won't be a quick solution, but we are working towards improving that intersection.
Well, I would say that's a good start because I'm sure none of us want to see a fatality. And so we got to do what we must. And so I'm glad to hear that we're working on it and hopefully that continues working on it and something eventually gets done. And sometimes that means you got to spend money to do it. And that's the reality. I have a second question. Thank you. And I'm just wondering whether it's for yourself or Chief Thompson, but again, today there was a vehicle that hit the CN Bridge again, of course, on William Street going underneath evidently, somehow people just don't seem to know the measurements of their own vehicle. Beats me. But in any event, what I'm wondering about, do we keep statistics on the number of vehicles that are hitting this bridge? Because I'm interested in knowing that. Have we kept statistics on it? I realize it's CN Bridge, but still, it's our road. And I'd like to, for safety, I'd like to know, are we keeping stats on that? And if not, is this something maybe we should be considering?
Through your worship, it's certainly something we will have the information on. We haven't specifically, I can't tell you off the top of my head how many vehicles, and I do know it's unfortunately far too common. As you mentioned, it would be really nice if drivers, especially commercial drivers, understood the height of the loads that they're carrying and or the vehicles they're driving, but we can certainly compile that information because we do notify CN every time the bridge is struck. So that is something we can certainly compile. I can't say over how many years, but we can certainly take a look through our logs and compile some information.
And after compiling of it, does that mean you're going to present it to council? You present it to CN so they have an idea of, what the impact is each year? And because even though it is their bridge, this is still something that affects our community.
Through your worship, we can certainly present it to council. CN is very well aware of every incident because they do inspect the bridge when it's struck for structural purposes. So I'm sure that they may actually be able to provide us with the logs quicker than we can go through our own. So I can be in touch. We've had really good communication lately with CN, so we can certainly reach out, see what information they have, and bring it back to council.
Councillor Borneman.
Really good communication, Mr. Cairns. Does that mean that we're making progress on the sidewalk at St. Charles Crossing? Hopefully.
Through your worship, the short answer is yes. We plan on having tender documents released either late January, which is in the next week or two, or the very first week of February. So. Good.
Any other questions for staff? No. Then correspondence, Ms. Johnson.
Mr. Mayor McGarvey, we have 4 items of correspondence. The first 2 are very similar, one from the township of La Vallée and the other from North Algona Wilberforce, and both were resolutions of support for the town's resolution sent to the province supporting that the government of Ontario implement a road safety program. The next item is from the township of McKellar. Similarly, it was a resolution, a letter of support emphasizing the importance of retaining Canada Post services, other government services, and associated jobs at 74 James Street. Council will recall that a few meetings ago, there was a resolution expressing support for the jobs and the services of Canada Post as Canada Post is looking for public input on that building. And the last item of correspondence is from the Ministry of Northern Development. It is a letter in response to a letter from yourself, Mayor McGarvey, regarding the expansion of the NOHFC catchment area to include the District of Muskoka. And it's simply an expression that there has been some requests for the extension of that catchment area. And so that is what the proposal is, to include the District of Muskoka. And that's the correspondence.
Thank you. Councillor Borneman.
This week, recently, there's been conversation online about communication with Lakeland Power with respect to issues that arise out of fire services, shutoffs and such. And I was kind of left confused. Is a meeting being arranged? Do we have to request that a meeting be arranged? Where does that go from here? Or
Chief
what is-
Thompson might
what's
have, but my understanding was that there was possibly an offer that the gentleman would come from Lakeland Power, make a deputation and answer questions. Chief Thompson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to discuss with my contact there if he would be able to come and speak to council about some of the capital projects and some of the initiatives that they are putting in place, the things they've discussed with me, so that there can be questions from council, as well as then maybe a little more public information available. I can make those arrangements if council so desires.
Okay, yeah, I think we pretty much have 100% agreement on that, so, yeah. All right, so there's no deputations tonight, so reports, and we'll start with Councillor Keith.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy New Year, as I said, to all. My reports. First of all, just because our last meeting was in mid-December, shall we say, I continued ringing bells for Salvation Army cattle and doing my best to assist the Salvation Army in raising funds for our community. December the 19th, I went to the Parry Sound Friendship Center Winter Solace in their new building, of course, and that was it was a wonderful experience, certainly very welcomed, and it was really appreciated, the acceptance and willingness of Indigenous people to work with us in a gathering, and there was a feast, and it just was a very lovely time that went on over a few hours, and there was music involved and dancing and drumming, and it was a real learning experience. I attended the mayor's levy, and I'm sure that'll be mentioned further. As well as I attended the Salvation Army volunteer recognition dinner that they had to show people that they appreciate the effort of volunteers during the Christmas season, etc., to really help the community. And I attended the OPP Detachment Board meeting. There was re-election, and I was re-elected as the chair, and vice chair is Councillor Tom Lundy from Archipelago Township. The stats for the West Parry Sound area were reviewed. They seem to be in sync with the previous quarter. There was nothing that was really outstanding, alarming. The initiatives of the OPP over the next few months are being explored. One that they really expanded on, and of course was in downtown, has been mentioned previously at council meetings. They were hoping the recommendations that were given to the Quality Downtown Committee will be able to be followed through with, because it certainly is thought that it will be helpful to all of our community in making safe, and also recognizing that there are vulnerable people that will be downtown, and learning to be more accepting of such situations and of diversity. So I think that was pretty important. Also, the admin support person for the board is now going to be the Carling Township. So we're working away slowly at developing terms of references, policy procedures, administrative matters to make this board be very efficient. And I'm sure you'll hear more at the next council meeting after there is a further board meeting. So all seems to be in sync right now, and that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashford.
After a very busy holiday season, we had one meeting with the industrial park. And as I think we all experienced, it was a pretty straightforward meeting where we get reports back that things need to be repaired or maintained. And then we look at the budget and try to figure out how to afford to repair and maintain those things that need to be taken care of. And in addition to that, slipped my mind. So short report today. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Pulaski.
Thank you, your worship. On January the 13th, I attended the Belvedere Finance Committee meeting. The home is Belvedere is looking very good financially right now. We're making some changes. Hopefully we would keep it on looking very good financially. And on the same day, I attended a Chamber of Commerce, a Zoom meeting with the Chamber, and they're going forward with some input from the existing members, and it looks like it's going to be fairly good. And then the last 3 days, I was at the Roma Conference in Toronto. I attended a lot of workshops, learned a few new things. Took in the trade show, spoke to some of the people in the trade show that I've seen. I believe I'm going to talk to staff about it a little later, some of the stuff that's available, or some of the products that are available that we may be interested in. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCann.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow councillors, staff, and public. I'll start by mentioning the mayor's levy, which took place on Sunday afternoon, the 5th of January. My wife and I attended this annual event at the Stocky Center. It was great to see a super turnout. Congratulations to Jody Conton on being awarded the Order of Parry Sound. I've always found it interesting and enlightening to observe this annual ceremony. You get to learn about the busy and interesting, involved and dedicated lives of the recipients of the Order of Parry Sound. So well done, congratulations, and well deserved. A happy new year to everyone. Would like to extend a happy best wishes to Mr. Mayor, fellow councillor, staff, and the public. If you'll indulge me for a moment here, I have a website, dougmccann.ca, and I try to keep folks up to date with my reports and usually a Christmas and New Year's message, and I'm inviting people to look that up. I wrote something called "Is Technology Taking the Human Out of Our Existence?" And just a reminder that we should need to remember to go out of our way to personally reach out to people, our neighbors, family and such, in such a personal way that we remember that communication is so important, a friendly hand to conversation, and not just screen time on Facebook or such. It's also an opportunity, or talk about how easy it is to extend a compliment, show gratitude, empathy, maybe patience or forgiveness if necessary, open a door for somebody, run an errand, volunteer, let someone with fewer purchases get in front of you, let a driver merge in front of you when you're lane. Sometimes just surprising your fellow workers with coffee and donuts can go a long way. So I invite you to take a chance to read that if you haven't seen it yet. And I almost forgot to report on the library meeting that we had. The board gathered on Wednesday, the 13th of January, and Tom Lundy was reelected our chair. And Susan Murphy reelected our vice chair, and we're looking forward to another great year. The library is doing great things, and sends their thank you for the time that mayor and council and staff gave to them during their deputation before Christmas. And that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Borneman.
Thank you, your worship. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. I too attended the Order of Parry Sound ceremony and want to congratulate Jody Conton for her the award. It's well deserved. On January 10th, I attended a meeting at the Airport Commission with a prospective investor, I'll call him, someone looking to build a a facility at the airport that would benefit the area. On the 13th, along with Councillor Valesky, I attended the Bell Heights Finance Committee meeting. The committee is working hard to ensure that the municipal levy for 2025 is maintained at last year's level and is pretty close to doing so. On the 16th, the industrial park met. I attended along with Councillors Ashford and McDonald. And I'm sure, like every other committee, all are working towards the 2025 budget, what can be done and what should be done. I want to extend my congratulations to the Oldham kids, Bruce and Megan. They're back on the big league ski tour, and both are succeeding dramatically. Bruce won an event, I believe, in Colorado, and Megan's had a couple of really good showings recently in Europe. And finally, I don't see her online, and I can't see her in the back corner tonight. I want to congratulate April McNamara. April recently received the Tony Brenner Mentor Award through the Ontario Recreation Facilities Association. Mr. Brenner was the president of the Ontario Arenas Association and responsible for the professional development program at the University of Guelph. His passion and dedication was learning and willingness to give back to the community. And so this is a pretty prestigious award. It's been out there for over 30 years, and Miss McNamara is the third female to receive this award. So in my mind, it's quite a tribute to the hard work that she puts in for us down there. It's not an easy job. The arena is a big part of any community, I think, especially here. And having to say no doesn't win you any friends, but April does her very best at building bridges and partnerships in the community, and has done a good job for us over a long time. So I appreciate her work. That's my report for this evening.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, fellow councillors, staff, and public. Not a heck of a lot to report. On January 16th, I too attended the Industrial Park Board meeting. Budget updates, water treatment plant and lagoon updates. And as Councillor Borneman touched upon, and I just came across this today, a nice little 15-minute documentary on Megan Oldham has been published on YouTube, entitled Countdown to 3. This short documentary follows Parry Sound's old Megan Oldham's journey from her childhood to her latest Winter X Games and her march to the 2026 Winter Olympics in hopes of reaching the podium. So congratulations to the Oldham family, and that is the end of my report.
Okay, thank you. I'll be brief. Council, staff, and public. January 5th was mentioned, the New Year's levy. Congratulations again to Jody Conton, who received the Order of Parry Sound. Jody certainly has gone above and beyond to help build a better community. It was really great to have a good crowd there at Stocky Center as well. And I'd like to thank our staff at the Stocky Center, their efforts, and Rebecca Johnson for all her work in preparing for the event to make sure that it went off without a hitch. January 9th was the Parry Sound District Social Services Board meeting, and council should have received the report in their email. Okay, good. January 17th, I had a meeting with our MPP, and there's a bit of buzz right now. The steel is going up at the Recreation and Aquatic Center there, and it's beginning to start to take shape. So people are very, very happy about that. And other than that, Happy New Year's to everyone, and let's hope that 2025 is a really good year for everyone. So, all right, on with, yeah.
I was wondering if you wouldn't mind speaking to the good news that we heard from the U-Haul people, and the fact that Parry Sound is definitely definitely growing in population with the report that came out recently.
I think Councillor McDonald's closer to that report than what I was, so he was
Okay,
one
very
that-
well.
He circulated it.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think the media has published a little bit of it, but yeah, Parry Sound had been named number 9 on the top 25 growing cities in all of Canada, based on U-Haul's statistics. So it's a pretty big position for us to be in. I think the first time we've been on that list in a long time, if at all. So yeah, things are definitely on the move here.
That was people moving in, not out.
Right.
It's based on the net.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, moved by Councillor McDonald, second by Councillor Borderman. The council accepts the quote from Toromont in the amount of $21,500 excluding taxes for a snow blade for the Public Works Department current loader machine. Councillor Blasky?
Thank you, your worship. A couple of questions, I guess, and Mr. Bonanza, I see is here. Is this a brand new blade?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it is.
Okay, and there's wings on it, I understand?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, and it's included in, it was included in the 2024 budget. I'm just wondering why we waited this long to tender it. We could have been using it. With the kind of snow that we've got this year, could have used it maybe.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we had something lined up. I don't know if you remember, for council here in the fall. We took possession of the blade, had a bit of an issue with the supplier. So we had to send that blade back. The blade that we wanted and they proposed was over budget, so I had to go back to the drawing board and find a different supplier. And we actually came in under budget quite a bit, so that was better for us in the long run. And just with holidays and everything, just getting it back to the council to pass, so that was for the bit of the delay.
Okay, thank you, and congratulations on getting it below budget. And we're going to get some money in from the existing blade we have now, which should even lower the price even more, I guess.
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Any further comment? No? All in favor then? And that's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Borderman. The council directs staff to work with local authority services to establish an automated speed enforcement program in the town of Parry Sound. Yes. I saw one flying there today when I come out of work, and oh my gosh. Probably blew that flashing sign up or whatever at the speed they were going. And the weather wasn't great either, you know. So anyway. Councillor Gillespie.
Thank you, your worship. Unfortunately, I don't support this. I don't agree completely with it. I guess a couple questions, but if you I guess Mr. Kearns would be the person for this. The program you're saying will be funded by money that we get in fines. Is that how the supplier is going to be paid? So from what I read.
Through your worship. So there will definitely be revenues from fines. I know currently what our data shows, and staff don't feel that there's going to be a negative stream for funding, even with paying the required fees to LAS.
Thank you, your worship, and I'll admit I'm not really a fan of looking to make money from people breaking the law, which is what we're doing, and you hate the budget for fines. You collect fines that you collect for your budget this year to pay for things. from what I can gather on it, when if somebody gets charged with speeding, and as his worship said, there are a lot of different, the driver doesn't get charged, the owner gets charged. Is that not correct?
Through your worship, yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's under the Highway Traffic Act.
Yeah. So we started the highway traffic, we started these point system years ago to stop people from speeding. There's a penalty if you do speed, and with this here, all we're gonna do is make money out of it. Maybe slow some of them down, but you make money out of it. Nobody loses any points. That's correct, I believe, isn't it?
Through your worship, yes. Although I think there are some differences once it gets over 50 kilometers an hour over the speed limit. Then there are different enforcement mechanisms involved. If I could just speak to that a little bit, just your
Sure.
comments.
No, I just,
We've been looking at this for a number of years now, and we've actually sat down with the OPP. It seems that the province has put this process in place because the capacity of the police forces in the province to monitor and enforce speed is not there. And I guess whether you agree with the concept of the fine or not, the enforcement piece can be done automated, which frees up the trained officers to enforce laws that can't be enforced in an automated process. So criminal activities and those kinds of things, where you have specialized officers trained versus sitting on the side of the road trying to issue traffic tickets. So that was the discussion we had with the OPP about 2 years ago, that they just did not have the capacity. And I don't believe, from my own understanding within the Ontario Provincial Police, they don't have the capacity to manage speed problems. And that's why the province has chosen to allow municipalities to have access to this type of enforcement program.
thank you. Again, I'm not a long-term 25, 30-year resident of Parry County, but I've never, ever seen a speed trap set up in this town. I've never seen a police officer with a radar gun sticking out the window for a speed trap. And I guess I'm a little old fashioned. I'd like to see a police officer do it, charge you with the speeding. So you're saying then that these cameras are going to show other crimes being committed? Is that?
Through your worship, no, absolutely not. These are strictly for automated speed enforcement. Those cameras in particular. Now we have talked about and we have installed other cameras around town, but they have nothing to do with speed enforcement.
If I may, your worship, continue on. What's this going to cost us? What's it going to cost the town?
Through your worship. So there's a number of costs actually. So Ms. Kruger and myself have been working through this for a long time now, looking at administrative penalties. So that's more of a bylaw, that is a bylaw process to get away from the Provincial Offences Act court enforcement. So there are some advantages in working this bylaw for automated speed enforcement towards administrative penalties that can be transformed to include other bylaws that are also can be enforced through administrative penalties. So people wouldn't get it. You don't get a parking ticket if we're using administrative penalties. You wouldn't have to go to POA court and they wouldn't have to process it. Same issue that the OPP have had, the POA courts have had, the capacity to process fines and cases and all those sorts of things. So again, my understanding is the province has put these processes, including administrative penalties, in place to allow municipalities and enforcement agencies to be much less bureaucratic, I guess much more efficient in terms of processing these. So the cameras themselves that we are looking at through the LAS program are about $36,000 a year to lease. They look after the installation, the maintenance, the calibrations that are all required under the legislation. It's a very regimented program with very specific requirements to be met. So the camera supplier looks after all of that. Also the replacement and damage and all of those sorts of things. You pay a lease per year or it's about $3,000 a month, I guess, is what we're looking at. We haven't entered into any formal agreements with anyone. What this is before council is directing staff to work with LAS towards establishing the ASE program. They have a joint processing center in Parry that is now at capacity because other municipalities have signed on with LAS. They are opening a second joint processing center in Clarence Rockland. And what they're saying to us is, if council is supportive of this, they will reserve capacity within that joint processing center for us to be able to establish this program. There is a fee per ticket. I can't tell you all of that right off the top of my head because we haven't entered into a formal agreement with them. That would all come back to council at that time if we are moving ahead with this.
And then just one more, just a comment. Before we had the point system, the people used to think, well, the fine they pay for speeding is just the license to speed. And that's why the point system come up. The way this is basically going to be the same thing. You get a camera, catches you speeding, you pay your license to be able to speed, and it doesn't cost you anything. You can keep going because you could have 10 or 15 speeding tickets in a year, and if you have points, you'd be out of a license. But being where there's no points directed to it, they won't be pulling the license plates off the vehicle because it's had that many speeding tickets, and you don't know who's driving. Now, the owner of the car definitely would start having an input over his son driving it too fast all the time and getting tickets, or himself. I just. What if it works perfect and we don't get any speeders? It cuts right down. So now we don't have the fines to help pay for this thing. It's going to be sitting up and hanging in the wall, and everybody's going to follow the rules and not speed. And
through you, your worship, if I could.
Sure.
So there's really no long-term commitment in this. Ideally, that's exactly what happens. Everybody follows the law, drives the speed limit. We're looking at establishing it within a community safety zone in front of the soon-to-be K-12 school. We're seeing increased development along that section of Joseph Street, as was mentioned just earlier about the pool complex will be opening in 2026. The schools will be taking advantage of its proximity. I'm sure the multiple schools around town, whether it's St. Peter's, Parry Sound Public, and or the K-12 school and the French school at the mall. So we're seeing large increases in vulnerable users along that stretch, and we will continue to see them for a few years, I'm sure. Ideally, that's exactly what happens. Then we shelf the program, stop paying the lease on the camera. Everybody's doing exactly what they should. Unfortunately, that's probably not going to happen. If the fines do go unpaid, they cannot renew their plates. So there are penalties at the end of this. If monetary isn't your driver, then I would suggest that the excess funds be reinvested into a road safety program where we make the road so you can't speed the way that people are speeding currently. You can reinvest in reconstructing the road. There's a lot of traffic calming methods that can be used. And again, unfortunately, a lot like the intersection at the south end of town, they aren't cheap to reinvest in traffic safety and traffic calming. So if there's a program out there that can self-fund the redesign of roadways, that's perfect in my mind.
One more, if I may, Your Worship. If this is approved this evening, that doesn't mean we're going to have them. This means that we're going to talk to them. Is it still going to come back to council before you actually start putting signs up or speeding cameras up?
Through your worship.
I need to be talked into for a little bit, that's all.
Yeah, it will definitely come back to council. And just for everybody's information, the ASE program requires 3 months of signage ahead of any cameras being turned on and fines being issued. So people are well aware of the fact that they're coming. and that you will be subject to enforcement through automated speed enforcement at least 3 months ahead of time.
Yeah, just a comment on that. I was going up Avenue Road in Toronto today and there was a sign up, speed cameras in effect, and I'm looking around real quick, where are they? What am I doing right now? You know, thought of it, but anyway, I'd like to be talked into it a little bit better before I'd support it, but thank you.
I think Councillor McDonald's next.
Thank you, Your Worship. For Mr. Cairns, I mean, in principle, I do like the idea of slowing traffic down, especially in the school zones. Joseph Street's bad. Bow Street's really bad coming down the hill. River Street. Is there a threshold for these cameras? If somebody's going 45 and a 40, do they get a ticket? If somebody's going, you know, well in excess, do they get a bigger ticket? Like what's the threshold on those cameras? Because I don't, you know, we travel those streets ourselves, and that could get quite costly if somebody's getting a ticket for going 5 or 10 over. But
51, isn't it?
Through your worship. So there isn't really a hard threshold. What I'm going to suggest is you're not going to get a ticket at 5 or 6 or 7 over. I would suggest it's probably not a whole lot different than if a police officer was monitoring your speed. Usually they use some discretion, so there will be some. It's definitely not set at 41 you get a ticket. The way the fines are calculated is it's outlined in the Highway Traffic Act as well. So, and I don't know those numbers, but there are thresholds in there that if you're certainly at a higher speed, you will get a bigger fine. So it's a per kilometer accumulation of the fine. So if you're at, say, and don't quote me, if, for example, if you were between 10 and 20 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, it might be $5 per kilometer that you are over. 20 to 30 might be $7 per kilometer. It's kind of this escalating scale it's within the Highway Traffic Act. You can certainly find that. Anyone can find that. So it is an escalating scale, and there are some victim surcharges and those sorts of things as they are with other ticketable offenses.
And I guess another follow-up would be, and this has been brought up before, I think Councilor McCann, maybe a while back, about red light cameras, because I know a lot of people blow through red lights on a consistent basis and at very dangerous intersections. So I'm just wondering if that's still been on the table, if there's been any talk of that as well.
Through your worship. So red light cameras themselves, no. When we talk, not yet. When we talk to the OPP about the quantity of violations, in terms, and they measure it from crashes due to improper turns on lights and that sort of thing, there really aren't that many. I know there's lots of instances where probably people are going through red lights when they shouldn't. I've seen it myself. But in terms of statistics to support that versus automated speed enforcement, for instance, we know we have those signs that you see that are up and flashing, they all count speed, they count volume. We know how many folks are traveling and at what speed. So the difference between the two is that the data is there to certainly warrant the investment in automated speed enforcement. And again, if there are excess funds, council can certainly roll that into traffic safety programs, of which red light cameras could be part of, and be funded through that type of program, for example.
Thank you.
And I wouldn't want to be quoted on it, but I've heard that if you go over 51, you start to get it. That's where the fines start. Which
So I guess it would depend on the speed limit in a 40 zone.
In a 40 zone, which
and
that's where we're looking at. It's a 40 zone, right?
Yes, definitely. On Joseph Street, it is a 40 zone. It is limited to in a community safety zone currently, and I know council, I think, did pass a resolution previously to ask the province to allow it in other locations, as other municipalities have, outside of community safety zones. For instance, Bow Street is not a community safety zone currently. So.
Yeah. Councilor McCann.
Well, the cops are going to be watching you, Councillor McDonald. So actually, I'm glad that he brought the subject up because I wanted to make sure that we weren't talking about red light cameras here at all. This is something I would support. I've read the good, bad, and ugly on these cameras from other towns and cities. It seems the only way you can get the message to people is through the pocketbook, and these things do a good job of it. Yes, it slows people down. I've heard comments that people know where they are, and as soon as they pass them, they speed right back up again. So yes, it's not a perfect world, and there won't be a perfect solution to this. I guess my question is, are these static cameras, are they portable? Do they move them around? Because in some cities, I know they do.
Through your worship, the intention here is to have static cameras at this point. You would have to re-advertise, so being portable becomes a little bit problematic because you have to be 3 months ahead of time and when you're moving them, so it becomes a bit of a problem in terms of the portability isn't instant, for example.
And what do the cameras look like? Because some of them have sustained damage in some other, where people have kicked them in or knocked them over or what have you. Is that something, are they ground level or are they hang from the light standards? And then I have one more question.
Through your worship, there are varieties of cameras. The ones that we would be looking at are not ground mounted. You might be referring to the one recently. There was a news story in Toronto where the ground mounted camera was deposited into a pond nearby. So unfortunately, that kind of vandalism obviously cost somebody in the long run, but the cameras would be pole mounted, definitely not ground mounted.
So here's another question, might be putting you on the spot. And this is where those who are really concerned about their privacy, does the camera take a picture of everything that goes by and flags those that are speeding, or is it just triggered when someone is going too fast?
Through your worship, so it captures the image of the speeding vehicles only.
And only that.
Yeah, and it's not the occupants of the vehicle, it's actually the vehicle and the license plate itself. It doesn't capture the occupant of the vehicle in any form because of those reasons.
It's interesting because on the Google Street View, they go through a great effort of blurring out all signs of identity. And so there might be people who are thinking that, again, Big Brother is watching us every step we make, every drive we take, so that's good. I certainly support this, and I think you've made it clear that we can turn around and back away from this if it's not going to work for us. The other thing I have read about these is that they do return a tremendous amount of revenue in funds, and that's not what our objective should be, but again, that's the reality, and if that's what it gets to take people to slow down, I guess so be it then.
Councillor Keith.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments and one question. If I support what is before us today with the automotive speed endorsement program. I would say, though, that we should all be aware that the provincial offenses, we have a provincial offenses advisory committee. And although in the last few years, it hasn't been as profitable as it had been for many years, all municipalities benefited from people being fined. And if things change and depending on the offender, municipalities do benefit from those who commit offenses, and that money is used in our municipality. So I think that's just the reality. As those automated cameras would only be in specific spots at this point in time, it would seem to me that if we're hoping for utopia, that's a great thing, but I don't really think that we're going to get utopia. So I have a feeling that those cameras can only be a benefit to us in reducing speed. And as for Myself, I know that I have seen the police officers out with their radar gun, slowing people down. So, I mean, I think it's like anything else. Sometimes we see things, one of us sees things on some days and other days you don't see things. But I think this is certainly an attempt to reduce the speed and to keep our citizens safe. And I think that's the ulterior motive here. But my question that I would have for Mr. Cairns is, provided things kind of move along here, I'm wondering, do you have, shall we say, a hope for target date that you're hoping that they may happen? Just a ballpark date, please?
Certainly, through your worship, in speaking with the folks from LAS, we believe we could be up and running before the end of summer. That's an achievable target.
That's an achievable target. Well, I think if that happens, even though it may not be the most helpful, depending on that date for this year, certainly it gives also anybody who's visiting our community, let alone our citizens, lots of time to get into the sink and recognize this is just, again, a reality of what happens in a community. Everywhere we are now, technology keeps changing all the time and it's coming in all over. And it's just the reality of the world. And I think we have to accept it. We may not like it, but we sometimes have to accept it. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Kearns.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to add quickly, this is not our only attempt. We've been attempting to slow traffic down over the last few years significantly. We've installed bollards in the center lane, on the center line with speed limit signs attached to them. We've installed oversized 40-kilometer-an-hour zone signs. They're big enough to go out on the 400 at 110 kilometers an hour. We've had the radar feedback signs up. So there's been multiple attempts. This is certainly not what we saw as this is the be all and end all. We have been attempting to have an impact, and unfortunately we've had a very limited and short-lived impact on speeds overall, unfortunately. So driver behavior is very difficult to change.
Councillor Borneman?
So I feel Councillor Bolesky's pain as somebody who has a heavy foot as well. Having said that, I grew up here when there was one stoplight in Parry Sound. Things do change. This technology is tried and true, Mr. Cairns. It works in other places. This isn't cutting edge stuff.
Through your worship, no, this even in Ontario, we're a little behind the curve, but we've been on the path of keeping in touch with the way things are moving forward, for sure.
So whether we like it or not, it's a public safety issue, especially in the school zones and on Bow Street. And you know, I'm willing to risk paying the fine when I get stupid or lazy or whatever it is that causes people to speed. But I think just as years ago when the province started taking impaired driving more seriously and issuing lengthy suspensions and heavy fines, people started to pay attention. I think the same thing happens here. Yeah, there will be a learning curve. You know, we see that when we put up stop signs at post offices and with new public schools and whatnot, where there initially are issues, but people eventually, or at least most people, do adjust. To me, this is a no-brainer. The sooner we put it in place, you know, the better.
Councillor Bolesky?
Thank you. Just to Dr. Borneman's comment there, my last speeding ticket was June the 9th, 1973. My heavy foot has really hurt me all that time.
Where was that, Councillor?
Where was it? Just north of Melonville on Highway 26. But anyway, a police officer in a cruiser with a speed trap will do exactly the same thing. It's not bad. It will, and the tendency is slow down too.
Okay, thanks.
As long as he didn't have his mic on.
I know, that's right.
I didn't want you to hear it.
Counselor Borneman.
Just in response to that, I agree. The police officer with the radar gun will slow you down as long as he's in the spot. This thing is gonna be in place 24/7.
Mhm.
So, you know, people will figure it out where they are. They'll just speed someplace else.
Anything else? No. I'm just gonna say that we need to do something because the police, and I do see them out with the, you know, sitting there and that kind of stuff, but I know that they have other pressing issues that they could be working on. And if we can have some technology look after this or whatever to try and hopefully slow people down, let's do it. So anyway, all those in favor? Any opposed? One opposed. Carried. Moved by Councillor Ashford and seconded by Councillor Keith, that council approve the disposal of the 2012 GMC fire pickup to the Majuatoon. Okay, search and rescue team in as is condition for $1. Discussion. Councillor Keith.
I'm just going to say that I support this, as I think that, again, this is an opportunity for us to show that we're good neighbors and that we are concerned for safety for all and all of us working together. So thank you for what's been presented here tonight.
Anything further? All in favor then? That's carried, none opposed. Moved by Councillor Ashford, second by Councillor Keith, that the staff report regarding the Auditor General's report on the Minister's zoning orders, MZOs, be received for information purposes. Any discussion? Councillor Keith?
Yes, I think it's really important that this matter was brought to and put on the agenda tonight, because I think in us receiving the report and other people interested in reading council and the reports, it certainly clarifies what the town's position has been. And it's very important sometimes in a community where often the word is thought to be either because something appeared on Facebook of a friend told me such and such. It's nice to see something in writing where we have the facts real clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on that? All in favor then? That's carried, none opposed. I would like some support for direction that staff clarify with Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing staff on the town's position with regard to the MZO lands. Councillor Ashford, Councillor Keith, any discussion on that? All in favor? That's carried then, thank you. Moved by Councillor Bileski and seconded by Councillor Ashford. Council approved the 2024 fourth quarter progress report on the town's key performance objectives, otherwise KPOs, as set out in Schedule A. Is there any staff comments on this before we go further? No? Questions from staff? I mean, from council? Councillor Keith?
Yes, thank you. I have about 4 questions in looking over the key performance objectives. And I looked at, item 4, and oh dear me, it's, it would be, I believe, maybe item 46. It has to do with the implementation of the MAT investigation, being all part, it's going to be a figure that would be in the budget for 2025 for development tourism strategy. And I'm just wondering if there was a percentage or an amount that is being added to whatever our figure is going to be when that comes on a budget line. Is there any way that Ms. Phillips can advise of that?
Yes, just one moment. I'll grab that for you. Or if you would circle to your next question and then I'll come back to that, if that's okay?
Okay, my
Thank
next
you.
question actually relates indirectly to that. And I just wondered on item 48, which again relates to that. Originally, the KPO said there would be a cross-departmental team that was to meet in November. Now, I noticed that there is addition saying there was a meeting in January. So was that November meeting possibly put over to January time? Or is this something different?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, this is really more of a preliminary meeting, staff meeting to discuss like what a working group would do, sort of planning for that and more high level to get it going. So pre-meeting, pre-working group meeting.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. And then my next question, it probably goes to Mike here, Mr. Cairns. It was item number 82. And on it, I know Councillor Borneman had made a comment tonight initially at our meeting regarding the St. Charles sidewalk crossing. But I wondered, the way it's written, has there been any recent meetings with CN since September 24th? Or is the upcoming meeting going to be the first meeting since that entry of September 24th?
Through your worship, there's been a flurry of back and forth, engineering diagrams, engineering drawings were submitted to both railways last year. I believe as of today, we have approval on everything. And as I mentioned, we're at a point where we can go to tender confidently with both railways on board in terms of the construction schedule for 2020. The completion date is to be 2025. I'm actually having a bit of a back and forth with Transport Canada as the funding agency as well to confirm. And I did receive an email today from our engineering firm confirming that the intention is to have construction completed in the 2025 construction season.
Thank you. So my clarification then is because the way it's written, it says CN. So from your comment a minute ago, I take it that CPKC is also involved. And so is that meeting going to be two railroads and staff, it's at reps and staff, or what would that be?
So the meetings have been with each railway individually. And then we're coordinating through Transport Canada. It's a bit of a process. So the approvals are issued separately from CPKC and from CN. And as I mentioned, we're at a point where we've confirmed everybody is on the same page, not at the same meeting, but on the same page and at the same point in the process, if that makes sense.
Yes, that does. And then I just have one more question, and I believe that's not for Mr. Cairns, but again, in reading the key performance indicators, I'm wondering, Mr. Harris, there is mention regarding the community engagement person. So are we in the process of recruitment? Like, where would we stand there, please?
Through the mayor to Councillor Keith, we're well into the process. We've interviewed a number of candidates. We've come up with a short list. For all candidates, when the town's filling position, we have all candidates complete an assessment questionnaire called Preview. The three candidates that have been shortlisted have all been
I've just gone through that, and this afternoon I got the HR, and Rebecca and myself got the results so that we haven't had a chance to look at it. So we're well on the way, and the next step would be to see of the three candidates, which ones we want to have in a short list or second interview.
So just for clarification, again, not in utopia, but wish list, is it hope by summertime that position would be filled?
I would hope so. It depends if we're able to, hopefully attract one or if not more of the candidates to take the position. And we haven't looked at the results of the preview, but that if one of these candidates is successful, then I wouldn't see that being a problem.
That's my last question. Thank you.
Ms. Phillips?
Oh, back to the question about the, how much is in the budget. So right now, the preliminary draft has 60,000 for economic development and tourism strategy, which I imagine spans past just the MAT program by itself, but includes a lot of the plan of what that funding would be used for and working through that working group and the strategy. So
Thank you.
From economic development. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Anything further? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Bielanski and second by Councillor Ashford that the Council for the Corporation of Town of Parry Sound hereby supports the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress call upon the Government of Canada to implement an automatic 3-year extension of the visa-associated work permits and benefits for all Canadian, Ukraine authorization for emergency travel CUAET visa holders in Canada. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Item 10.11, moved by Councillor Ashford, second by Councillor Bielanski. That bylaw number 2025-7464 being a bylaw to authorize temporary borrowing to meet the current expenditures of the town of Parry Sound until taxes are collected and other revenues received, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings, and that's carried. Moved by Councillor Ashford and second by Councillor Bielanski that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time. Passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor Borneman.
I think for Ms. Phillips, I think we do this every year out of caution. I don't recall it ever being utilized. That's not to say that it hasn't been. But I'm wondering if rather than going through this every year, if there isn't an easier way, like a line of credit or something that a person or a corporation might use with a bank. Because I'm thinking to myself, especially in this day and age where disasters and climate change and bridge collapses and all of these other things occur, that temporary borrowing might not just come between tax collection dates.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So each year the municipality does pass this bylaw, and it's due to the requirements of the Municipal Act in that there are thresholds where you can only borrow a certain amount of the budget within certain time periods of the year, and that we're required to pass it each year if the municipality is to use a line of credit for operating or any other purposes within that section. Yes, and due to the timing of property taxes, that necessitates the possible need of it, even though we haven't had to access it in my time here. Yeah, so each year we do have a line of credit and the bylaw is just required to maintain that line of credit and access it in the event that the town would require that.
Thank you. Counselor Keith and then Counselor McCann.
Thank you. My comment was going to be, I think it's important that this comes back on the agenda every year because it shows our taxpayers that we are being accountable and keeps people right up to date. So I think it's just a good communication, and it certainly doesn't take that long for us to cover this on a council night from my perspective. Thank you.
Counselor McCann.
So just to be clear then, when we pass this, the money that basically we say is okay to loan or borrow, I'm sorry, is that for staff's discretion? And I mean, I guess things come back to council one way or another, but the money that would be borrowed pursuant to this resolution, are there conditions or strings tied to it in terms of what you can do with it? Or is it sort of like petty cash?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the intention of the borrowing is for operating funds. So if at any point the municipality's cash became below a certain point, that would be available to meet the requirements, like the immediate requirements of the municipality. And then it would be paid back. But yes.
Yeah,
But-
I got you. Thank you.
Very, very low likelihood that we would have to do that.
Counselor McDonald.
Just quickly for Ms. Phillips, the 6.5 million, is that kind of standard every year or is it adjusted? Would that be enough in an absolute worst case scenario?
So it could be adjusted based on how much the municipality is allowed to borrow, based on that municipal act regulation. But we have maintained the same balance over the last 5 years and likely longer, and haven't had to access those funds. So in the event that we thought that could happen, we could reevaluate the total budget, how much the town needed, and update the threshold. But at this time, that seems to be plenty.
Thank you.
Anything further? No, all in favor? That's carried. Moved by Counselor Keith and seconded by Counselor Ashford that bylaw number 2025-7465 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a contribution agreement under the Northern Ontario Development Program Community Economic Development Stream with the Minister of Indigenous Services, referred to as the Minister of Indigenous Services, and Minister responsible for Federal Economic Development Agency for Northern Ontario for the Waterfront Master Plan be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Counselor Keith and seconded by Counselor Ashford that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Who's Ms. Phillips?
Sure. So the bylaw before council is to approve a contribution agreement with FedNor for completion of the Waterfront Master Plan, which is already underway. The agreement will provide 50% of the funding towards a total project cost of $120,000. The 2025 budget will reflect that 50% funding. And throughout the early stages of development of the plan, there's been a lot of participation from the public, leading to desire for more public consultation. And those additional estimated costs are included in the total cost of $120,000 within the contribution agreement. The first draft of the plan is expected to be released in February, and information received to date from all sources will be summarized, and the plan will include a vision and goals and is on track for completion in the summer 2025.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Counselor Bielanski, seconded by Counselor Ashford, that bylaw number 2025-7466 being a bylaw to authorize a loan guarantee for the Belvedere Heights Home for the Aged Board of Management to be considered as read a first time. All in favor? Carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Counselor Bielanski, second by Counselor Ashford, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Discussion? Ms. Phillips, are you going to? No?
Only if you would want me to.
Sure.
Okay, I can give a quick
Quick
synopsis.
overview. Yeah.
Yeah, so Belvedere is requesting that all 8 municipal owners approve a guarantee for a line of credit for the purposes of buying back life leases that aren't sold on the market and other operating and capital requirements. The town's portion of that guarantee is 371,925. The forecast that Belvedere provided until up to 2029 provides that rental surpluses would fund the interest and principal repayment for that portion. Additional buybacks that may extend beyond then. They're hoping that economy of scale, the new build, will be able to be allocated towards some of the repayment of that line of credit, and planning for long-term is still underway for borrowing beyond 2029. But
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Counselor Keith?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Phillips. Are you aware if there are any of the municipalities have already signed, have consented to this?
Yes, Belvedere advises that Seguin and McMurray Monteith have already approved the guarantee.
Thank you.
Counselor Bornman?
So thank you for that, Councillor Keith, because it leads me to my usual thing about governance review in the area. This is, something as benign as adding senior citizens beds in a community where the need is well demonstrated has to go before 8 councils for approval. And I'm going to guess that this will probably be back in front of us again at some point in the near future with a different rendition or version of this, because I'm willing to bet that not everybody approves this, that it won't meet to everybody's satisfaction. And I appreciate Ms. Phillips' time and Mr. Carmichael's time, especially as a layperson who's done a tremendous amount of work for the board. But it just again goes to show how the area is dysfunctional and its approach to some of these things that the odds on meeting everyone's needs are pretty remote, that these things should be going in front of one panel for review and either approved or sent back to the drawing board. The idea that you're going to meet everybody's agendas is just a moving target and very difficult to achieve. And as I say, this is for something as benign as senior citizens beds. When we get into more controversial things, task becomes near impossible. I'll leave it at that for tonight.
Anything further? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor McCann, that bylaw number 2025-7467 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a memorandum of understanding with the South Seguin Snowmobile Club for the prescribed use of various property parcels as a snowmobile trail be considered as read a first time. All in favor? Carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor McDonald, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time passed, signed and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor Ashford?
I just want to confirm if I understand this correctly, this is the same thing we did north of town. Now we're just doing the south side.
Through your worship, yes, that's correct. South Seawind is just happens to be on the south and east side of the Seawind River.
Okay. Councillor Barnman?
Oh, not to this specific issue, but I congratulate the clubs for getting their land use agreements with the MTO
Yeah.
signed last week.
Yeah.
While winter isn't maybe what we remember it, it's still an economic driver in the area when we're having weather like we're having now.
Sure, there's a number of people with very expensive machines that want to run them for this year. A mile or two, that's right, yeah. Yes, Councillor.
I read online someone saying that the province is willing to accept their money for licensing and trail permits, but getting the land use agreements was a different story, so.
That was pretty funny when I heard that. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor McCann, that bylaw number 2025-7468 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a transfer payment agreement with His Majesty the King and the Right of Ontario as represented by the Minister Solicitor General for a fire hall ready room project be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? And that's carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor McCann, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time passed, signed and sealed. Any discussion? The bonus, all in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Borneman, that bylaw number 2025-7469, that being a bylaw to stop up and close an original road allowance of Parry Sound Drive, being part one of registered plan 42R 21064, and a part of the original road allowance College Drive, being part four of registered plan 42R 19097, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? Carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor McCann, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time passed, signed and sealed. Mr. Rand?
Thank you, Your Worship. Are you just looking for a summary of what's?
Yes. That's awesome.
So this road allowance closing was part of or the next step in council's resolution from November, where council approved resolution for the Gardens of Parry Sound to acquire a portion of the unused road allowance. So should this be approved tonight, there's a number of next steps. The next one being that the land be rezoned by the proponent in order to prepare the lands for the use, followed by an appraisal and an agreement, which would also have to come to council.
Very good. Thank you. Anything further? Oh, Councillor Ashford?
I just wanted to say the same thing again as when we talked about this last. I just think this is one of the best things we could be doing with this property. And we need housing, and to have housing for seniors, and to provide some housing for our college. There's not really much better I think we could do here.
Good, good. Anything else? All in favor then? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor McCann, that bylaw number 2025-7470 being a bylaw to stop up and close an original road allowance, being the road allowance between lots 25 and 26. Concession 2 in the town of Parry Sound, being Part 1, Registered Plan 42R 22682, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? Carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor McDonald, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Discussion. Councillor McCann?
So Mr. Rand, can you give us a bit of a synopsis on this one?
Absolutely, through you, your worship. So this application was submitted or would facilitate conditions from a previous consent application. And that consent application created 3 separate lots, and there were a number of conditions which included the requirement for a roadway agreement for access over an existing private driveway, which is located on public lands. So the stopping up and closing of this road allowance would allow for the agreements to be registered on the title of the lands, but the lands would remain in public ownership and public access will be preserved. An agreement with the property owner is the next step. So that's currently being drafted and reviewed by the town solicitor, and this agreement would require council approval before proceeding.
I think that's very important to stress, because that's one of the things when I was reading that particular one is that public access will remain, because there were concerns about that in the meetings that we had with other people, general public. So, yeah. Councillor Borneman.
Mr. Rand, not everyone has access to the mapping and the visuals that council and anybody who has a computer might have. So could you tell those who don't where we're talking about?
Thank you, worship. Through you, I'll try my best to describe where the lands are located. I don't have an address, unfortunately, but they are.
That's the one off Louisa Street.
Yeah, it's off Louisa, just south of Seguin River.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. People ask me all the time when we say.
And that particular road heads towards the Seguin River.
Correct.
So, with public like town property at the end of it. So, and during the meetings that we had, preliminary meetings, the public was very concerned about that being just granted to the property owner, but no, this will remain public access so that people can go through. Yeah, yeah. Councillor McCann.
Yeah, I'm still not sure if this was brought up before or not, but this access road that gets you right into the railroad, is there room for more development in there other than the lots that we've been addressing here?
Through your worship, with respect to the development potential, I guess, the lots actually, so there were 4 lots being created through severance, and they were all actually slightly undersized. So there was a minor variance that was required in order to recognize the frontage on a few of the lots. I don't believe that there would be any additional development rights currently in the zoning bylaw OP. They would have to come to council for probably a number of processes before additional development would be permitted on those properties.
Thank you.
Maybe, no, question, maybe not that particular property, but property across the right of way?
To your
On the
worship,
other
like
side?
to the east,
Yes.
right? So in order for another party to utilize the road allowance for access or continual access, they would have to initiate a process similar to this, where they would enter into an agreement with the municipality in order to ensure maintenance and like proper insurance and stuff like that. So that's in place. So through this process, we are preserving public access. However, any exclusive access that would regular access to private lots, that sort of thing would require an agreement with the municipality.
And this road allowance, is there an actual sign that states what the road is, what the name is?
Through your worship, not right now. I suspect there would have to be at least a address sign at the end of the roadway. I'm not sure it would need to be named, but we see with private roads, there may be like a main number with a dash, and then unit numbers after that. So if the entire property's, I don't know what the address is, my apologies, but if it's like 78, 79, there might be like a dash 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that would be the addressing for the
I see.
newly created lots.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Thank you.
Anything further? All in favor? That's carried then. Moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Borneman, that bylaw number 2025-7471, being a bylaw to close up and stop those parts of the original concession road allowances being part of Hamilton Street on registered plan 63 and further being part of Francis Street on registered plan 63 and further being part of Foley Street on registered plan 63 and further being part of Mary Street on registered plan 63 in the geographic township of Parry Sound and the district of Parry Sound, being designated as parts 1, 3, 4, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 23, 27, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, and 36 on Plan 42R 22-622. Be considered as read a first time. All in favor? All in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Mr. Rand, synopsis of this and describe where it is. I know where it is, but so the general public knows.
Thank you, Your Worship. These lands are located to the east of Emily Street, south of McFarland. Currently, the lands are made up of a number of parts on an older plan of subdivision, along with unopened road allowances. So this process would help with preparing the lands for future development, and by closing the road allowances in conjunction with the future deeming bylaw, it would allow all of these lands to merge into one single parcel.
Right. Anything further on this? All in favor then? And that's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor McDonald, that bylaw number 2025-7472 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2004-4653, the zoning bylaw as amended for 113 Bow Street and legally described as part of lot 26 concession 1 in the town of Parry Sound being part 2, plan 42R 15762 be considered as read first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Borneman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Rand, you've been a busy boy. Moved by Counselor Keith and second by Counselor Ashford. That bylaw number 2025-7474 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with Connor Industries for the renaming of section of Parry Sound Drive to Connor Drive be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Counselor Keith and seconded by Counselor Ashford that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Thank you, Mr. Connor. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, Counselor McDonald?
Yeah, sorry, Your Worship, just quickly. So we did notice that MTO had signed off on paying for the highway signage. Do we know how much that's gonna put back into the sale of the naming of the?
Through the mayor, Mr. Connor bid, his proposal was $50,000. We weren't sure what the costs were, and we didn't know at the time that the MTO was gonna pick up that cost, so we held back $20,000. There were 4 large highway signs. We didn't know if they needed to be replaced. So we still have a few signs on town streets to change. It shouldn't be significant, but I think the large chunk of that $20,000 would be freed up to contribute to the new recreation center.
Thank you.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Bylaw number 2025. Yeah, never mind. Yeah, it's okay. I was thinking of something else there. Anyway, bylaw number 2025-7473 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Counselor Ashford, seconded by Counselor Keith, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, prior to adjourning, I'd like to offer the following information to the public regarding the next council meeting. The next meeting of council for the town of Parry Sound is scheduled for Tuesday, February the 4th, 2025 at 7 p.m. The meeting will be held at the town of Parry Sound Council Chambers at 52 Seguin Street, entrance via Gibson Street, and it will be live streamed and recorded. All regular council meetings are held at 7 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except January and August, where only one regular meeting is scheduled. Council meeting schedule, notices of special council meetings, complete agendas and minutes, and instructions on accessing live streamed and recorded council meetings are all posted on the town's website. Go to www.parrysound.ca and use the search bar. Your TV airs council meetings on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. following a regular council meeting. And for Cogeco listings, contact www.yourtv.tv. Again, on behalf of myself and council, Happy New Year to everyone and all the best in 2025. And thank you, everyone, and have a good night.